Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Disclaimer at the beginning of this, if you hear like a nose whistle, it's this guy. He's just got permanent heavy breathing going on in his life, and he's just hanging out in the library with me, so he's gonna be in the background. So if you hear like wheezing and nose whistling, it's just him. That's just the normal for Sushi. Please don't chew on my cord. He may get the boot from the library very soon. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about recent reads that I have enjoyed. But this is basically my solution to wrap-ups because I read so much and I don't want to talk about every single book that I read, so I'm basically going to talk about the ones that I had a really good experience, or at least like an experience that's shareable, you know? Usually these are going to be like 5-star reads though, out of like the recent batch that I've read. So the first book that I want to talk about is an audio arc that I got from NetGalley. I'm pre-warning you guys, I bounced around a lot with genres and then I just dove straight into dark romance. So a majority of this video is going to be dark romance, but I did start off with a nonfiction book. So if you guys have been around for a while, you know my chosen nonfiction subgenre is like animal/science-y stuff. So there was an audio arc of a book called Bitch by Lucy Cook, and it is on the female of the species, and it's exactly what that little subtitle says, and it was one of the best books I've ever read. It basically discusses the female of all species, and how females are not only underrepresented in science as far as like scientists and women in STEM and the people doing the studying of the things, but also the actual subjects that they are studying. We know so much about a lot of species based solely on male anatomy and male behavior, because that's basically how our society has always run. So this book goes into like the nitty and gritty details of like genitalia and reproduction and gender roles within those things, but also it discusses the female gender or sex, depending on the situation, their roles in a family dynamic across different species, and how we're starting to discover that there are other species in the world other than humans that really serve a purpose past menopause, past reproduction stage of life. So that was fascinating. I loved learning about all of the different dynamics as far as like breeding purposes go, anatomy, and then getting into the nitty and gritty of like hierarchy and behavior within animal groups. Oh, it was so cool. So if you're like me and you're a big like nature documentary nerd, this is totally a book to read. It does get fairly graphic about the genitalia, just tossing that out there, but it kind of comes hand in hand with, you know, science and biology. So 10 out of 10 would recommend that book. And then I did take a random turn into high fantasy. I read the Bloodsworn first 2 books, saga by John Gwynne. I don't know why. I've seen these books talked about. The Shadow of the Gods is book 1, and then The Hunger of the Gods is book 2. I basically have seen these occasionally pop up from a bunch of the people that I follow who also read fantasy, and they were describing Orca, who is one of the female leads in this book, as one of the best female leads they have ever read. And I'm constantly on the search for that. So this is a story that is told from 3 different POVs. 2 are women, 1 is a male. And basically all 3 are on a mission of vengeance of some sort. And it is gritty and dark. John Gwynne writes grim dark fantasy, so it's definitely very war-torn and bloody and savage on the page. But I love that when it's coming from women. Like, these women are bloodthirsty and out on a mission, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So if you're looking for some really kick-ass high fantasy, this series flies by. It reads so quickly. It's Norse / like Viking inspired. It's about a world where like the gods have kind of like gone vacant for a while and the humans are ruling and doing what humans do best, you know, just like ruining the world and themselves. And it follows different points of views. One is like a person who is supposed to be royalty, but she is like shirking that responsibility and she just wants to be like a battle war leader. And then it's a woman who is on the hunt to get her child back. So it's like hell hath no fury like a woman missing her child, you know, it's one of those. And then we are following Vogue, who is the only male POV, and he is essentially a kind of an enslaved role. They're called thralls in the book, but he basically plays like a slave role. And he is on a mission to basically like avenge his sister's death. So it's just, it was so good. So I read those 2 miscellaneous books, and then I took a deep dive into dark romance, and I've been swimming in that deep end for quite some time now. And it is solely because of this duet. I'm nervous to talk about this on my channel. I know this has gone around book talk for quite some time. This is a very, very well-loved duet. This is the Cat and Mouse duet by H.D. Carlton. This is Haunting Adeline. Book 2 is Hunting Adeline. By the way, there's going to be a book haul coming where I'm going to haul this, so spoilers for an upcoming video next week. So this is a stalker romance, and it is dark. So I'm going to talk about this briefly because I don't want to like draw too much attention to this series for the sake of anybody who might be very, very disturbed by it. This is one of the most disturbing series that I've ever read. And I've read a lot. I've read a lot of dark and depraved things. I had to put book 2 down a few times and walk away from it because book 2 is rough. As far as like triggering content, this is basically all of the trigger warnings. There is rape, sexual assault, abuse, torture, death, murder, thoughts of suicide, PTSD, trauma, healing, all of the above. You know, it's the full list. First and foremost, this is a stalker romance, and this series toes the line between horror and dark romance in the best possible way. So there's like very creepy haunted house vibes. Zaid is stalking our main character Adeline, and it is terrifying on page because like she's aware that he is standing outside her window watching her at night. And it's this like back and forth. It's this cat and mouse game for quite some time. It's dark. If you guys read dark romance, you know. But it went from me being like, oh, this is the creepiest mother effer I've ever read about. How am I going to swoon for this guy? To by the end of book 2, I would die for this couple. So I don't know. H.D. Carlton just wormed her way into like my favorite author list because I finished this duet, and I also read Shallow River, which is her previously published standalone book, and this one is not as horror driven as that one, but it's still as horrific because it follows essentially like domestic abuse. So again, basically the same trigger warnings that you're seeing in that duet is in this one. They're completely unrelated. This one is a standalone about a woman who ends up in one of the most unhealthy, toxic, most abusive relationships I have like ever read on page. It rivals that of Long Shot by Kenny Ryan, but like way ickier and way darker. But it is a romance between her and the estranged brother of her abuser. And he is a serial killer detective. Well, not a serial killer. He's a detective who is on the case of a serial killer. So it also had some horror vibes mixed in, but definitely not as like haunted housey as the Adeline series. So I read those, and that basically made me plummet into the depths of dark romance, and I haven't resurfaced since. So I picked up Ammo Jones. I read In Peace Lies Havoc. This is book 1 of the Midnight Mayhem series. One of you sent me this a while ago. I finally got to it. Chef's kiss. Incredible. It is dark, toxic romance mixed with a traveling circus. So this was exactly what my brain wants all the time. I have book 2 on my Kindle, and then I got a physical copy of book 2. It'll be in the book haul. So I'm working my way through the series, but this is the only one of the series that had an audio, and I happened to be at work when I was listening to these, and I was like, I need another audio. So I downloaded Sicko, also by Ammo Jones. This is also a standalone that is unrelated to the Midnight Mayhem series, but this one is like a foster brother romance that also touches into the world of like mafia vibes and human trafficking and all of the dark things. Basically take all of these books that I'm talking about with the grain of salt that is the content warnings of severe dark triggering things. Most of it is going to be sexual assault and rape and human trafficking and trauma. All of the above. So I liked Sicko a lot, but I definitely liked the vibes of In Peace Lies Havoc a bit more. Just definitely my taste. And then I delved into one of the OG dark romance writers, and that is Pepper Winters. I finally got to Tears of Tess in Quintessentially Q. I haven't read book 3 yet, mainly because there isn't an audiobook that exists of it yet, so I have that on my shelf ready to go. These are the Mystic Box versions, and they're so pretty. This is a very standard dark romance plotline and writing. But I feel like this is also like an OG dark romance series that like if you're reading dark romance, this is one to like get to. I think it was published in 2013, so it's been out for a really long time. And you can definitely tell that this subgenre has improved over the years. But it follows a girl who goes on vacation in Mexico and ends up getting kidnapped and sold into the human skin trade. And it is her relationship with the man that she gets sold to and how everything isn't really as it seems. I was okay with it. I like the story, the plot as a whole. The writing kind of left something to be desired just because it felt like I was being told a lot of things instead of shown a lot of things. Like, we were in Tess's head, but we were also being told word for word, like, I am scared of this man. I feel this way about this situation, instead of just like letting the emotions tell the story, if that makes sense. So that was my only gripe with that, but I did enjoy myself while reading these. It got good in this book. It's very similar pacing and plot and storylines as the Haunting Adeline story, if you know what I mean. Okay, I lied. I treaded water up to the surface just to read through the Nashville Neighborhood series, because these are books that I was reading with my book club this month. Also because I wanted to read some Nikki Sloan before a Polycon came up so that I could know if I wanted to bring the books to get signed. I'm gonna be honest, this is gonna be the only not like excited review in this. This book is terrible. I am so sorry to anybody who really liked it. I cringed my way through this entire book. This book was good though. I liked The Pool Boy. This one was highly enjoyable. This one was so not good in my mind. Like, one, can we pick a sexier name than Greg? Every time she said his name, I just whoop right out of the story, you know? So both of these are taboo romances. They are both age gap. This one is older man. This one is older woman. Normally I like this dynamic better, but this one proved me wrong. I actually thoroughly enjoyed the relationship in this. This one is obviously a relationship between a very successful woman who is going through a divorce, and it is her affair with her pool boy, who also happens to be the son of one of her best friends. So it gets touchy very quickly. This one is obviously a story of a girl with her doctor. No, it's not her doctor. It is a doctor, and it is her ex-boyfriend's dad. So similar dynamics, but the writing in this one just did not do it for me. So I just wanted to toss that into this video. I haven't read The Architect yet. That is the third one to go. So I'll get to that one soon, because The Pool Boy won me back over. Book one was a little iffy though. Okay, getting back into dark romance. I read The Devil's Playground duet. So book one is The Devil, book two is The Devil's Advocate, and both of these are by Ashley Jade. This is a duet that made its rounds on booktube last year, I want to say. I'm sure you recognize the covers. And it's one of those series that you are told from the author in the author's note at the beginning, you're told in every review that you read, is to go in blind and just trust the process. I love books that are pitched that way, because I tend to go in blind to a lot of books. I prefer to know as little as possible going in and to just enjoy the ride. This is definitely one of those series where even by the end of book one, I still wasn't really sure what was happening. Like, I didn't really understand the point of the story. I didn't really understand who the characters were in relation to each other and why that was important. Like, you don't quite know who you're rooting for. You're just kind of like watching things happen. And then book two really does tie everything together, and it does get pretty dark. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be dark. I didn't go into it expecting it to be dark, but it definitely is a very twisted story. Like, both with the amount of plot twists that get dropped on you throughout book one and book two, but also just the characters are all terrible people. Like, there's not one character that I'm like really into because they're a good person. They are all dark and depraved people who are just bloodthirsty people. So if you are into a very like toxic, angsty type of story, this is definitely a duet to check out. They're very short. Both of them are very short books, and you just kind of read them back to back, and it's an experience. So I still don't know if I really enjoyed them or not, but I read them. That happened. But while I'm on the topic of this author, I kind of have been like working on authors at like collectively. So I read that. I read a bunch of books, but I also just recently read The Words by A. Jade, who is also Ashley Jade. So while I'm talking about this author, this is not a dark romance, but this was incredible. This is a book that I've seen a lot of people talking about recently. It came out, I think, at the beginning of this year, end of last year, somewhere in that time frame. And it is thick and chunky, and I already have a physical copy ordered because I am obsessed with it. This is a rock star romance that spans a really long period of time, and it gave me Mariana Zapata vibes. It's not super slow burny, but it just feels that way because we are seeing the characters develop for so long, and we are seeing everybody in the story play out their scenes for so long. Because I feel like Mariana Zapata does slow burn really well, but she also just like sets up the world and our cast of characters so well that you are just in love with everybody by the end of the book. And that's what this book felt like to me. So we start the book when our couple is essentially in high school, and she is being brought on to tutor him, and they are from opposite sides of the tracks in life. He is from like an abusive, poverty-stricken home. Like his dad beats him. He grew up in a trailer park, and he is struggling to graduate. And she is the daughter of a famous music producer, and she is brought on to tutor him so that she can help him graduate. But a big part of this book is the fact that she is a heavier female lead, and that is a big topic in the course of the book, is that she is not a stick-thin character, and that weight is one of her struggles through the whole story. So it is them, and then we flash forward a bunch of years, and he is essentially a famous rock star, and she is struggling in life. So they kind of switched roles, and it is them coming back together through forced proximity, essentially. It has all of the tropes. Like, if you have a favorite trope, it is going to be in this book. It is paced so well. The relationship is just done beautifully. Like, you want to smack the crap out of both of them, and then you just want to hug them on the next page. All of the side characters were great. I'm not a huge fan of rock star romances. It's not something that I gravitate towards, but it's also not something that I stay away from. I'm just kind of neutral about it. I was obsessed with this one. So if you're looking for a not dark recommendation from this video, there you go. The Words by A. Jade. Fantastic. Okay, jumping back into the dark stuff, I read Pitch Dark by Alex Grayson and A.M. Wilson. I've had this on my TBR since 2020 because Alex Grayson was supposed to sign at a Polycon in 2020 before, the world shut down, but they did a virtual version of it where there were just a ton of like live streams with all of the authors that were signing there. And I watched Alex Grayson's one, and she talked about this book, and this was way before I got into dark romance, but she said Pitch Dark is one of the darkest books that most of her readers have ever read. And I would agree with that. So this book, I am not going to describe it as a romance. I'm going to be honest. I actually hated that it was turned into a romance. This reads like horrific true crime. It's not true. So I guess it reads more so like a really horror-driven thriller. This follows a guy who is a detective, and he went into the force because his childhood best friend and sweetheart was taken, like when she was on her way to the bus stop one day before school, and she was never recovered. And he has been on this case for like 15 years past that happening, and he has never been able to let this go. He wants to solve her case. And it is the story of another girl who is a victim of what we're assuming, a very similar situation, escaping, and he ends up taking her in, because he's assigned cases like this. He ends up taking her in and helping her, like, acclimate back to society. But the main thing that I'm going to talk about in this book is the fact that that is what's happening in the present, but we are flashing back to the torture that this poor girl went through on page. It is extremely graphic. This and Hunting Adeline are going to be the two books that I'm going to tell you guys, heed my warnings, okay? They are rough. So this one, if you have ever read really, really dark thriller books, like really, really dark horror about serial killers who take girls hostage and essentially just chain them up in their basement and do whatever they want to them, this is what is in that book, and it is bad. It was stomach churning for me, and that's coming from somebody who reads a lot of stuff like this, who has always been into the dark stuff of the world. It was rough. So it's that, but it was also fantastically done. Like how the book was paced, how the like mental and emotional trauma actually processes, because her brain essentially shut down and she had like forced amnesia happen to her. So the psychology of it was very interesting. I personally wish that they had not turned it into the romance. Like basically the last 5% of the book I could have done without. And that's not spoiling anything whatsoever, but that's just, I wasn't very happy with like the epilogue of the book, but it was an experience. So moving on, I also then tackled Coralie June. This is an author that I've wanted to read for a while, so I have read / am working on the Malice Mafia trilogy right now. I am halfway through the third book. Book 1 is Malice, book 2 is Wrath, and I'm reading book 3 right now, which is Grudge. And this is basically like a horror, dark mafia reverse harem. It's all of the above. It's all of the good things. But it's definitely dark. Like, the romance itself is not dark, but one of the love interests is very creepy. Super creepy. I kind of love him, but he's also very creepy. So, one of the characters is kind of a necrophiliac, and it's questionable. There are questionable things that happen. So it's that. I don't know how to describe the series. It's a set of brothers who are in a mafia family, and they all fall for this girl, essentially, and it's just the shenanigans that they get into. And by shenanigans, I mean, like, they take down a cannibal. There's a cannibal as one of the villains in this series. I don't know how to describe the series. It's enjoyable, though, I think. I don't know. But I also read Sunshine and Bullets by Coralie June, because that's the popular book that a lot of people were talking about, and I hated it. I really didn't like it. I didn't understand the point of it. I didn't understand the point of the whole plot. Like, it's a story about a girl who was in love with this group of guys called the Bullets back when they were, like, teenagers and in high school and, like, wreaking havoc in the town, and then something happened that made her run away and peace out and never talk to them again, and they could never find her again, and it is a story of them finding her and bringing her back into their lives, and the whole time you're, like, trying to figure out what she ran away from, and the reveal of that was kind of cool, but, like, I didn't really understand the point. Like, nothing happened in the book. I know it's just book one of a trilogy, so I probably should read the rest of the series to, like, understand the significance of things, but I just didn't care about the characters enough. So I'm gonna go back to my Dark and Depraved, Crazy Anthony, and the Malice series. So yeah, that's where I am. I am currently reading Lilac by B.B. Reed. I've always wanted to read this, so it's about time that I finally got around to it. This is a Rockstar reverse harem, so you can tell I'm channeling my inner love of the words book reader, but also reverse harem, because, you know, why not? Gotta love me a good RH. But B.B. Reed is one of, like, the OG romance authors, and I've always wanted to read this book, so I can't say much right now. I'm about halfway through. I'm enjoying it. It's definitely like an enemies to lovers reverse harem, about a girl who gets hired on to be the new lead guitarist for this band, and it's her relationship with all of the bandmates. So it's good stuff so far. It's not nearly as dark as the other books I was talking about, but those are all the books that I've been reading. I feel like I've been rambling for quite some time now. Let me know down in the comments what you've been reading, and if you have any good dark romance recommendations. A lot of you guys recommended the Mercy series by Deborah Anastasia. I'm starting that tonight. When I finish Lilac, I'm going to start Mercy tonight. So just tossing that out there, because I feel like that's going to be up my alley. So you guys have some good suggestions, so if you have any more, leave them down in the comments. Okay, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in my next video.